Thank you all for, again, having attended today and participated and being a part of this and helping these ongoing discussions. I'd like to introduce our last panel of today. We've got Jean Sandlin, Nathan Tierney, Kirk Lesh, and Teresa Rogers, along with Chad Barber. They're all part of a blended study that's currently going on right now. I'm not going to talk a lot about the study mechanics at all. I'll just give it to you a very brief overview because I wanted to focus today on more their experience in building these courses and for some of them implementing these courses. So Chad, Nathan, and Kirk have, the previous semester, taught 2 sections of their courses, one traditional and one in a blended style. Teresa and Jean will be teaching them this spring. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll introduce Chad since he couldn't be here.
Fall 2013 semester, I created a hybrid course for Biology 122 for my sections, and Harry Starn wanted me to make a little video about some of my reflections. So I made one that has a little bit of the logistics of the course that I generated and also a little bit of reflection. Harry said that he'd get CTL to edit out anything that was redundant or not necessary. And there's my 2 cents about generating a hybrid course. So, comedy is not mutually exclusive with generating a hybrid course in video lectures, okay? So there's some interesting things that you can do with video lectures when you generate your hybrid course. Hopefully I'll touch on a couple of those things. So this is the ups and downs of a hybrid course. The course I did was Biology 122. It's an intro course for biology majors. It's actually the last of 3 for biology majors. So usually they're a second semester freshman or they're a sophomore. And so typically these students have a little bit of experience in the biology courses and college level biology. It is content heavy. We go through a lot of material in a short period of time. Critical thinking is required. But it's based on knowing that content first, and actually that was very helpful in generating video lectures that they watched before they got to class. So typically it's a class of about 40 students. Very difficult in a lecture to do any active learning activities or anything like that. But this was reduced to 20 students for the hybrid course, and that gave us a little more flexibility in running activities when we wanted to. And I had taught this class 4 times prior to fall semester where I did 2 sections, one of traditional and one of hybrid. So what were the differences logistically? The traditional course met 3 times per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50-minute lectures. However, the hybrid, we did not meet on Monday. That was their time to watch lectures. We met for 50 minutes, the full time on Wednesday. And then we met for half of the class on Friday. And so Wednesday was dedicated to activities, and then Friday was dedicated to kind of a week wrap up and question and answers and any other last minute things about that chapter. So it was in-class lecture versus video lectures, and also office hours. I designed office hours to be in person for the traditional lecture course, and actually virtual using Blackboard Collaborate for the hybrid course. So what were some of the ups? Some of the ups of doing the hybrid course compared to the traditional lecture, we got to do a lot more active learning activities. And those were really fun, the students enjoyed them, and I think it made some of the concepts really kind of stick with those students. We got more questions answered during the time we did have in class, because the students have already reviewed the content and had a little bit of time in between watching their video lectures and meeting in class to absorb and let that material, that content ferment. And then by the time they got to class, it's sort of well thought out what questions they still had. So this gave a lot more discussion, directed discussion. You know, I think the traditional lecture, you hit them with 50 minutes worth of lecture and allow questions as you're going, and really most of the time you're just getting the deer in headlights from the students. So students overall reported liking the format of the course and also the videos, the video lectures. So I was pretty pleased that I got good feedback, at least reported to me. I'll be curious to see what they actually say in their evaluations. Some of the downs. The filming and editing was a lot of work generating these video lectures. CTL actually helped out a ton, and for, I know some of the other professors, they did a lot of the editing, and so you can actually delegate some of the editing work over to CTL, and they're very adept at it. So that's one note that I had. Sometimes technology got in the way. You'd have one lecture, video lecture, that didn't come up for the students, and so you got a ton of emails on that day. Sometimes it didn't record the points correctly. Students were always worried about whether or not their video watching had been recorded correctly in terms of their points. So that was a constant spot of concern for the students. And I felt like the hybrid course, because he didn't meet on Mondays, actually there was a lot less face-to-face. So is there less accountability associated with that, seeing the students less in class? I don't know. I'd actually like to run the course again and meet for, just have them meet for 10 minutes on Monday, just to have them check in and maybe turn in an assignment or something, so that you have a little bit more day-to-day interaction, and you can ask them, did you watch the video lectures? Are you up to date? That might inspire them to kind of keep up with the video lectures a little bit more. Really, you see them on Wednesday and Friday and don't see them again for 5 days. So there's something to that. So a little bit more of my reflection. I felt that the hybrid course went really well, and I enjoyed doing it, even though it was a lot of late nights of editing. It's hard to find a quiet place to do these video lectures and time to edit them. So recruit help from CTL. They're really good about giving good suggestions and helping out with some of the time-consuming things. Listen to the students and get feedback from them about your videos. A lot of times, a few little comments from students, you're able to change up the format or your attitude in the video lecture and make them more amenable to the students. As much as you can, try and connect with students immediately that you recognize aren't watching the video lectures and keeping up with them. Send a personal email right to them and say, hey, I noticed that you missed the last 2 video lectures. You need to be prepared for class. Please watch them as soon as you can. I was talking about points with the video lectures. So you can have the video lectures set up to record whether or not the student watches and or completes the video lecture. And I think that's a really big thing. Students are made to feel accountable and can get points, are rewarded for watching the videos, and that's a good thing. But also there's this element of you're able to keep track of the students. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody wants to shoot me an email or give me a call about going through the process of generating one of these hybrid courses, I think it was very worthwhile, and I'll be happy when I get to teach this again and utilize all those materials a second time. So thanks very much to Harry Starn and CTL. They made the process a lot easier. So thanks, and we'll see you soon.
So the rest of the panel, the rest of the panel wants to tell a little bit about your class, and maybe some of reflect a little bit on the positives and negatives you saw in either building these courses for AFB or implementing them for the other.
Okay, so I'm teaching public relations. It's a course that is for students that are typically sophomores and juniors. And I would say yes to Chad as far as the time consuming of the video preparation behind this. I started working on this course last summer, and I'm still tweaking things. And Vinian and I were talking about this morning, and I have to say, again, CTL is great. And he was saying that a friend of his was saying that my courses are much like children. Your first one, you're like so concerned about doing everything right. And then your second one, you're a little bit more lax. And by the third one, Hope you get home on time without getting hit by a car kind of thing. So I am hoping that I go through that, because right now I tend to be a little, I'm a planner, and putting something out there that I know the students are going to be using. You know, I like to change up, especially in public relations. I'll come in the morning and say, all right, did you guys see what's going on with the NFL scandal? And why do you think this is in the news right now? Domestic violence has been an issue for, you know, several years. And so, you know, we get good conversation going that way. So I've got concerns. I haven't run it yet, but I found that, so that's the negative side, is I'm concerned about community building in my class, and I'm concerned about the relevancy that I can bring to class. I'm still going to be meeting with them, so I'm hoping that I can compensate, but I'll be meeting with them less. The positive is, boy, it makes you take a hard look at your teaching and your content. And I have to teach it the same way. One more thing for the lectures, I actually was concerned about my energy level, like sitting in front of my computer just lecturing. So I actually had them come in and videotape me lecturing to a live class last semester. So I'm editing those. And what I'm finding is, like, I cover way too much content. And Minion was telling me that the research says that the lectures that they videotape lectures, like the perfect time frame is 6 minutes. So I teach them an hour and 50 minutes. So they're watching like 6 different, you know, lectures, and mine tend to be around 11 to 15 minutes. So it's interesting, and I'm thinking that I need to be more of an editor and maybe edit that content down. So it really is helpful in watching yourself teach. It's helpful in thinking about your content when you're sitting there listening to yourself. I'm like, okay, she probably, you know, way too much stuff for one lecture kind of thing. So in that part, it's been really helpful, but I don't have the experience that they do because I've not taught yet, so I'll let you know after the semester.
Hi, my name's Nathan Tierney. I teach the ethics course in the pilot program. I thought I'd start with my conclusions about my experience and then work backward. I was very excited and challenged to be asked to participate in this study. My final thoughts on it is I'm really glad I did. It was a lot of work, we've all agreed. Just making those videos takes time. But you learn so much about pedagogy if you go into a very different medium. Marshall McLuhan, you might remember, said the medium is the message, which was probably an exaggeration, but it's partly true. The way you teach and how you teach changes what you teach. And I will second you on too much content. If you do a hybrid class, you've really got to cut down on the amount of content so that when you flip it and you get to the interactive classroom session, you can do in-depth, student-centered grappling with problems. So cut down on the content, which may be a loss in some ways, but the gains are tremendous. So I encourage anyone who thinks they might like to try this to do it. I was thinking about Guy Irwin's talk this morning, where he talked about purpose-driven education. And I second your view that doing a blended course causes you to reflect on your purposes in teaching. What is the absolute necessary content that you want to keep? What can you let go in order to engage more interactively in the in-class session? There were challenges, no doubt. Some faculty reported that the students weren't watching the videos. I was fortunate in that nearly all my students watched all the videos. But I was a little worried about whether they used those videos as a replacement for reading the textbook. And I think there was some justification with that concern. I think bottom line, blended courses are a great new tool. They will eventually change our education system for the better. It probably takes 2-3 classes before you get any good at it. I wouldn't claim to be good at it now. I was trying too hard to teach the way I previously taught in a blended environment. I had to let that go and develop new methods, and I'm still working on that. But I'd do it again. Our students have changed. I've been at CLU 25 years, well, this is my 25th year, and the students are very different now. They're not great readers. They're less good at reading than perhaps a decade or two ago. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as they can learn something important in a different way. So I would support blended class learning. I know some of my faculty colleagues are very suspicious about it. They think that the in-class time is the only real teaching time. If I had to do it again, I think I'd include a live chat in the online portion to get more interaction in the online part, to a little extra time to be with students. And I've seen the evaluations, and some students really liked it, and some people thought they didn't have enough one-on-one with the teacher. So another thing, just to conclude, for a new learning methodology, teaching has to change, but so does student learning. And I think our students have to learn how to do that as well as we are. I teach a few purely online courses in the School of Management, and I thought, oh, well, I already know how to do this stuff, but I don't. A blended course is not like an online course. So there is a learning curve, but it's a great learning curve. If you're interested in addressing real educational problems, I recommend these courses.
Excuse me. I want to echo what everyone else has said. You know, Gene had talked about kind of rethinking your course, and that absolutely happens. I think one of the best things, and I would encourage you all to do a blended class, because it forces you to rethink your entire course, literally from day one until the final. And I think that's a worthy exercise that we should all go through, but with our schedules, it's very difficult, and this forced me to do that. So personally, that was a very good thing. Everyone had talked about how time-consuming the videos are. They are, but it's worse than that. Right, my bad. What I was trying to get at, and you saw it with Chad, and if you're listening to me now, you've heard it with me. We're not as good as we think we are, or at least I'm not. It turns out that I'm not very good at what I do. And then I say, no, I say that because don't hear yourselves. When you're editing the videos, you have no idea how often you say duh. It's just all that stuff. We all have quirks that you see on the videos. You're given a video and you scratch your head, and it looks pathetic on the video. It does. You itch your nose, and whatever it is, and it makes you. This editing process is really. This is what makes it so long. Is you want to edit out all that stuff, and so that's what I meant by it gets worse. Is you see all these wonderful imperfections that you have. But when you see it for yourself, it's really tough to see. It was really disappointing to see how often I said and and paused for no good reason. Even in a video lecture, you get lost. And it's tough to see that stuff. It's tough to see that stuff. One thing I will say, I doubt my students would agree, But I'd like to think that I got better as the semester went on. There I go again. So you got that. I want to comment. So far, everyone has talked about how positive this experience has been, and I would like to reiterate that. If I could, I taught a statistics class. I would only teach blended classes. The reason for that is the class time. So I teach my statistics class using Excel, so I'm in a PC lab, so all the students have their computers. And what I found out, or noticed last semester, was that the traditional class, you have the traditional students in the back of the class that have their computers on, and they think you're not that stupid, but they're off goofing around, right? They're laughing, they're typing way too much. No, seriously, you've all seen it. If you've taught a computer class, you've seen it. They are typing way too often, they're laughing, pointing at the screen instead of you, which is a good thing. But you see that in the traditional class, and what I wanted to point out, I did not see that in the hybrid class. So what happened was in my statistics class is in the videos, I just lectured on the theory. This is how we do hypotheses testing, blah, blah, blah. And then in the 1.5 hours of class time, all we did were hypotheses tests. So there was no, the theory was in the lecture, all that stuff. And so in the classroom, it was all that practical knowledge. Here's how you do this in Excel. And what I noticed in the hybrid class is the students paid attention. The level of noise in the classroom had dropped significantly. The students were much more engaged when we were going through it. No one was goofing around. I thought that the hybrid students asked me more questions and, quite frankly, better questions than my traditional students. I think Nathan is right. One of the negative things about the blended class is I do believe that the students use your videos as a replacement for the textbook. I do think that occurred in my class. If you do this, I made a huge mistake. I did not require videos. I mean, that's not true. I did not assign points to watching the videos. And that was a huge mistake because you will have a certain portion of your class that will not watch the videos. And because I had not assigned points, I had very little recourse for those students. And it negatively impacted their grades. Grade-wise, the biggest thing that I noticed between the two classes is my traditional class had the standard normal distribution right around a B minus, C plus. The hybrid class was a bimodal distribution, and what I think happened was the students that watched the videos were sort of in the B plus, A minus range, and then a few students in the C, and then the students that didn't watch the videos, that weren't paying attention, were in that C minus to D range. So that it did change my grade distribution. But I think that's my fault. I should have assigned points or done what Chad had done. And you can build in quizzes into your videos. And I think that's the way. If you do this, I highly recommend doing that, quizzes or assigning points. Because unfortunately, there's a certain proportion of our students that, well, they won't do it. And then the way I designed the class is they were in trouble because I didn't lecture. I mean, we just did problems. And that's the other benefit of the hybrid class is all I did in class were problems. Just problem after problem after problem. And I think that really helped the students. And then I guess the last thing I would say, positive experience, is when you're in a hybrid class, if you've made a mistake or if something is unclear, you just have to go back and make a quick 5-minute video, clear up any confusion, post it, and you're done. And that will happen. That happened to me. Some of my students say, hey, I don't understand what you meant. That this, I don't understand this. Oh, okay. I will make a short video, post it, try to clear up any confusion, and that seemed to go quite well. And it was nice to have that flexibility to be able to do that. Yeah, I'm done.
So I'm Teresa Rogers, I'm in biology, and I have not done the hybrid yet. I'm doing it this semester for Bio 121, which is an introductory bio course on cells and organisms. And I'm trying to think of what I can add to everything that you said. I guess I agree with what most people have said about it, especially how helpful CTL has been. I don't know if I could have gotten through any of it actually without Midland. Thank you. One thing that I talked to Sia about that I thought would be useful to mention is that I found when I started doing the videos, I'm shaking right now because I get stage fright, I could not believe how much stage fright I had doing the videos the first time, and it was painful. I would go into panic attacks, and I used to have panic attacks anytime I actually presented, and it's taken a long time to get away from that. And I kind of went back to first time I was teaching in grad school. I was the panic attacks again, where my mind would go blank and I couldn't even tell you my name if you had asked me. And it took a lot of trying again, doing it again, and doing it again. And like what Jean said, you hate watching yourself. Everything that I would see was just awful and wrong. And the number of times I've gone over the same lecture and did it again and again and again and again, and just would erase it because it was so horrible each time. It was, a ridiculous number of videos again and again and again, and like feeling very defeated, and finally kind of getting to the point where, okay, this is not really horrible. It's kind of where I feel like I am now. And yeah, you definitely notice what words you say. Apparently I say actually a lot. Actually, basically, that's what I say a lot. But yeah, so that was very interesting and unexpected, I guess. I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared for it to be just so hard to get into. I was prepared for having to spend a lot of time on the editing. I just wasn't prepared for the weeks of not having any video that I felt I could show anybody, even though Mignon made me show it. but yeah, it took a long time, and I'm feeling much more comfortable with it, which is good. But it does, I guess some of the benefits that I've noticed is that with the videos, I feel like I can really condense the content down, and I was really, in time, because I taught the same course last year, and I would take my lectures and, fix some things that I wanted to fix from last year. But after doing all the editing in the video, it's like, wow, this 15-minute lecture that I had that was hard to finish in 50 minutes last year, I cut down to 15. And same amount of content. And I'm really excited about being able to kind of focus the content just in the videos, and then have a lot of the active learning and the exercises, and make it feel more like a review session sometime, in the class, and when we meet in person. And so I'm really excited about that, because I think think that would be really beneficial. And I don't know if my students realize how much we do have discussions during class, because, you know, yes, we have content, but I would always ask questions and have them think about this, have them think about that. And I don't know if they realized how much time we were spending on discussions. And I think that it's going to be a lot more obvious, obviously, because it's, you know, all the content's going to be in the video, and the discussions and activities are going to take up the entire class period. So that'll be interesting to see how they perceive the class in that way, even though we do a lot of the activities, you know, or we did a lot of the activities during the class last year. So, well, and I'll have both classes.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have one question, well, maybe a follow-up. Nate, you mentioned how you had to cut a lot of content, and you had to do the hybrid at the same time as the traditional one.
Yes.
So you also cut content on the traditional one, right?
No.
You did not. Because this is what I am thinking, like if you have to just go back to the traditional system, would you apply everything that you've learned from the hybrid and just take some content out and use it the same as in the hybrid into the traditional one? Or do you think it won't work like that for the traditional class?
Okay, so you've got two questions there.
Yes.
The first one's easy. My remark that I would have to cut out content was a kind of awareness I came to at the end of the course, not at the beginning or in the middle. So I did not, in fact, cut content from either section. But I realized that I needed to, were I to teach the course again. By keeping all that content in the blended section, I found I had to move too swiftly. So now I know I will cut content in future. I didn't in either section this time. Which kind of leads me to an answer to your second question. Would it lead to a change in my traditional class? I think so, but I'm awaiting better skills on my part. I still have to learn this. If the medium is half the message, to what degree do you need to change the original to deal with the medium of the other? Look, there are pros and cons to a straight traditional versus blended course. In a straight traditional, yes, you cover more content, but you're interacting continually at every class. So it's still kind of student driven. All right, so here's my conclusion to your question. I was thinking it through. I probably wouldn't change the traditional course that much because I've done it so long. I know what works in that. But for hybrids, I would definitely cut content.
So I'm sorry, I have this follow-up question. So would you say, for example, that in the traditional system, students get more content, but not necessarily the critical thinking part you can achieve in both types of classroom, right? The hybrid as well as the traditional, or do you think the hybrid actually allows more of this critical thinking because you are, from the very beginning, already engaged into discussion and not necessarily lectures?
All right. I wouldn't put it as content versus critical thinking. You get the critical thinking in both. It's more content versus taking the lesson to heart, which is what the flipped side of blended courses allows you to do more of. It's a trade-off. In a traditional course, you're going to get a lot more coverage of what I regard as important material, but they might not have taken it so deeply and so personally. In the hybrid course, you're going to get less coverage of material, but more, I'm struggling with language here, more pedagogical experiential learning, not outside of classroom experiential, but in classroom experiential, if that makes sense. Whatever.
Does the rest of the panel kind of agree about that? Less content in the hybrid, or do you have different experiences with as you're building or running your courses?
I haven't run the course yet, so this is, I don't know. But my feeling as I watched my own videos for the editing process was I was being unrealistic of how much I was expecting my students to do. And to, you know, I have 20 years experience in PR, right? So for me, this comes second nature, and it shouldn't be that hard, you know, that kind of thing. And so it made me be a viewer again, and try to be a learner. And I'll tell you, one of the things, I mean, I was reading all these studies, and how should I do this and everything, but the most important little conversation I had, of course I'm a qualitative researcher though, was my qualitative discussion with a nephew of mine who was doing an online course. And I said, what do you like about, you know, what's good about it, what's bad about it, and from your standpoint, he said, well, I feel like, you know, when the instructor's there, they're talking just to me, and if I have a problem, I can stop it, back up, and replay what he said, and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, you know, I'm thinking that I was teaching like this 20 kids out there, but really what I need to be thinking about is that there's a one-on-one relationship that that student is having, so they're perceiving it differently than I was delivering it. And that made all the difference to me. And so then I started thinking about the whole thing differently, and then I started thinking that I was being really unrealistic of thinking that these certain things that I know so well were that important. Really, what they need to know is, you know, kind of like peel back the onion and here's the core. And so I feel like this has made me rethink my traditional course as well. And I'm going to run this course because of the study the same way I did my traditional course. But this summer, you better believe I'm going to be there editing. And I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues at NCA over in November. He's a former Cal Lutheran Comm professor, now he's at NYU, and he is in drama, and he said, you know, I've always thought that our job is to be the director of a course, you know, and me coming from the writing standpoint, I think, yeah, you know, I need to do more editing and be more realistic about what is important to share. And so for me, it's changed. I'm changing my whole course based on this experience, both traditional and non-traditional.
Just, again, I taught statistics, and I think that's completely different, because I did not change or reduce the content in my hybrid, and I didn't have any problems. Right, we went through a chapter a week in both the hybrid and the traditional, and I didn't have any of the content concerns. But I think a lot of that is statistics. We don't ask you, what does this mean to you? What does a hypothesis test mean to you? We don't ask those questions. We tell them what a hypothesis test is. No, I'm not trying to be rude, but that's what statistics is. This is a hypothesis test. This is how you run it. This is what it means when you accept the no. This is what it means when you do not accept the no. That's it. We move on. There aren't any of these, what does that mean to you? How does that impact your life? None of that. No, it's true. So it makes the content go a lot faster. We don't have to do that stuff.
And I think that's something that we lose when we move to the online platforms. So I taught hybrid in my PhD programs because it's easier, because I could go do all my research. I wouldn't have to prep a class, you know, like, because physically being in the class, it's a lot more pressure than it is working questions and doing things online. I know that back front, right, like you're creating videos, that takes a lot of time, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I sat through the engagement with students and how they felt engaged with the faculty here at CLU, and isn't that accessibility that we lose? I mean, if we move everything to online except for our one meeting a week or hour and a half a week, we lose that connection where they feel like, hey, Professor Fishbach, how are you today? When I'm walking around campus and I'm seeing them in the classroom and noticing that they have a problem and maybe I need to engage with them more. I'm kind
styles. Is that
I didn't lose that with my hybrid class. I feel like I had the same relationship with my hybrid students as I did with my traditional students. I do see your point, because that's part of the CLU culture, and I would agree with that. But this blended program, you're still meeting with the students twice a week. And so there's still two classes of pure FaceTime. So it wasn't an issue in my class.
And that style too is only for the purposes of this study, so we can have a clean, neat study, and we're meeting Carnegie hours and not going over them. If you want to incorporate video lectures into your normal class, however you want to do it, we'll help you with that, and you can have complete autonomy on how you want to do it. Do you want to just replace some of the textbook with video lectures and then meet the same amount of time? Perfect, that's great, and that model would work as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. It was just for the purposes of this study, we wanted to keep it. Does this actually, is it equivalent if we were to suggest in certain programs that they go into a blended or hybrid format, would the students still learn as much? Is this a pedagogically sound technique, or is it not? And that question is still unanswered.
I have a comment rather than a question. I am not a big fan of a polished picture of education. I want to make mistakes in the classroom. I want to scratch my head. I want to have my buttons sometimes buttoned up the wrong way. It's part of being in life. I don't want to feel like I have done something so bad that I have to perfect myself. We have enough photo shooting of people in Hollywood. Education has to be a place where your personality shines, where I tell my students, you have to learn by making mistakes. So if I have to make a polished picture of me doing no mistakes, not seeing oh my gosh, with my accent, that's another story. But it's part of, I think this is what attracted me to the education process, is standing there and every day being a different person. Because really, even if I teach the same lecture over 5 different semesters, I never do it the same. I never do the same examples. It's not, and when you say 50 becomes 15, you are not taking into consideration that you're writing on the board, that you're letting a student go and present an idea, that something comes up and you say, you know what, we're going to put the brakes down, we can discuss this idea. You lose all that. So
Well,
I know it might work for you guys, but for me, I can't yell at the students through the computer. I'm sorry, Dr. I have to.
Right, but the nice thing is, look, you're right, but I don't think that was the issue that I was trying to bring up at all. I think I was trying to point out when everyone was talking about how hard it is and how long it takes to create the videos. Part of that process was it's really uncomfortable to see your own imperfections. Are they great? Yes, we all have imperfections, and they should be in the classroom. I just found it personally difficult to see those. That's all I was trying to get at. And those imperfections shown in all their magnificent glory in the 2 days that I taught in front of the students. So they know how imperfect Professor Lesh is. There's no question in my mind about that. We all know that.
Yeah, I'd add that a blended class is not the same as an online class. So you do get the personal interaction, and you certainly get to show your warts and all. So don't worry about that. But I think you might be underestimating the personal connection that you get with students on the online part. We just talked about the video lectures, but there are other components to the online part. There's discussion boards, for example. And as I said, if we add live chat, that's a very personal and powerful way of connecting. So yeah, you're going to lose something that purely traditional methods of teaching have, but you're going to gain a lot, and the loss is not nearly as much as you perhaps hear now. Mike.
No, I didn't mean to undermine what you think is really good and would work for the benefit of the students. It's just, I think teaching, part of it is being imperfect, and having to sit through 3 hours to edit a 15-minute lecture to me is not my style. So it might work for you guys, which is great,
It may not work for everyone,
Yeah.
that's right.
So, but even the edited versions are.
That's for sure.
I'm just wondering about the impetus. Is this because the students are asking for this? Is this about where the world is going? Or is there a financial piece to this? What is the...
We're really concerned about actually the teaching and learning literature. So there's been a lot of studies that have looked at fully online, traditional, fully face-to-face, and blended. And there's a lot of research now suggesting that fully online and traditional are pretty equivalent for how much the students are learning and the key pedagogical outcomes. But that they're thinking there's some research that suggests that blended is better than either of those two, including 2 large meta-analyses that incorporate tens of thousands of students. And so we know that these things, it's a possibility looking at, but there's other reviews that say it's not. It's the same as online and traditional. And a lot of those are at large universities. So even though it's great to have those, we didn't know, is it going to work for our community? Is it going to work for us as the culture here? Is it going to work for our students who are used to small class sizes? I mean, it makes sense in a lecture hall of 400 to have that face-to-face of a video where it feels like your instructor's talking to you is something probably pretty special for them. But for our students, they get that. They get that kind of connection. So we really didn't know, is this going to work for us? But we do know that the literature shows that these might be more effective, and that, yeah, the students are somewhat requesting it, but that I think is not the most important thing. The most important thing is these could actually be better for teaching our students. And the question is, will they work at our institution? Which is why I wanted to do a kind of variety of different courses to see, and maybe they won't work for all of them, and certainly won't work for everybody, because you have to be that, you know, it's a combination of the instructor, the content, and I think the students and the culture.
And I was just going to say, in the biology department, David Marcy had already started doing the flipped classroom quite a while ago, and he does video lectures, and then he actually does it where you still meet in class for the same amount of time. So he meets every class for the same amount of time, all the time, and I've talked to the students about that, about how they like his course and what they think about that. And the biggest comment that I hear is that they spend so much more time with that class than any other class, because they have to watch the video lectures, and they're so long, and there's so much time taken doing that. And I would ask them about the amount of time, and I'm thinking that's the same amount of time you should be spending reading your book, but none of them do. And that's part of kind of this new student attitude about not reading books, and they're very anti-reading. And I was kind of against that, and I guess the whole hybrid thing in the first place, because it's like, well, I don't want my students to think they don't have to read the book at all. But at the same time, they're not. It doesn't matter how much I require them to read it, they're never going to read it. And I don't know if I'm just giving up on that or not, but it's kind of part of it.
I just wanted to add, what's the impetus behind it. I'm hoping to solve a problem. So when I give my students their midterm, I give them a midterm evaluation on me. I ask them to answer 3 questions without their name on it or anything, but kind of how's the class going for you, whatever. And then I always share with the class, like, here's your grades today for the test, and here's my grades. Here's the areas where you guys said I was doing well. Here's where you want me to change. And it's so funny, because they finally, I think, there's so many people that say you talk too fast, please slow down in your lectures, please, and then others like, we spend too much time on lectures, like, can we just get through them faster so we can get right to the activities, And so there's this dichotomy in our students and what their needs are. And I'm hoping to solve that problem by this blended, where my lectures can be rewound and be watched again. I'm really cringing. They'll probably show up on the web with some words I never said coming out of my mouth, like as a cartoon or something, because my students are pretty creative. But at the same time, I'm hoping to solve that problem, that I can never pace my class perfectly for every student, right? And so so this will be interesting. We'll see.
program would have been great for me as a student. And I can tell you, as being a small liberal arts college, that students, the traditional student is kind of dwindling. Now the non-traditional students are increasing in numbers. In fact, in 10 years, if not, it's arguable whether or not they surpass the traditional student now, but in a few years, they will. And having a hybrid option for them, for these types of students, would be great. But these aren't just students who don't want to read. They're students who are working adults with their families, and they can't be in the same place for 3 hours. But they still want to get the education. So just keep that in mind as well.
Nancy?
I just wanted to thank the panel for their genuineness and honesty. Having done my first class last spring by myself, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. It's like, wow, it's frightening when you see your face, full face on the screen, and you're going, who is that? It's me. And for your students also, and it wasn't until some of the students told me, it wasn't until I watched you, Nancy, over and over and over again that I got it. She goes, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have understood it. And that kind of made me feel better because they seemed to really love it, and it helped them with that. And it didn't seem like it affected my relationship because you still had those face-to-face. And also I did a lot of phone talks, one-to-one to support people. So my biggest piece that I'm going to do next semester, I'm going to spend more time going over the resources and orienting them. Like, this is how you go here, so that the technology isn't frustrating for them. Because some of them went random places. They hadn't been on computers, and you're going, what? Where did you go? Where did you get this? So just going through so they feel comfortable with the technology, so they can feel confident with the hybrid model themselves. So thank you.
Aaron, did you want to?
Yeah, I just had a question. So for instructors who are thinking about this or thinking about this, what one piece of advice, if you had to give one piece of advice, would you give them?
Start now.
Start thinking about it?
Start videoing yourself now.
Yeah.
I would find out what's worked for other people in a class that's very similar to yours. I kind of, well, not kind of, I do feel very spoiled that Chad has already gone through this with a very similar course, and I'm reaping all the benefits because, you know, putting the quizzes in there in the lectures to break up the time, and also make sure that they're actually, you know, watching them and giving them points for the lectures. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's probably going to be a lot easier for me than it was for him. So.
I would suggest you speak to that guy.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. Okay, then raise your hand. Because, there you go, that's the man. Because not only does he help you with the technology, but he'll say, hey, he found out that they weren't watching the lectures, or then the people that weren't watching the lectures did more poorly, and so, you know, maybe we want to think about giving points for that. That's something I hadn't thought about. So we're doing that, and then he also said, you know, that Chad had good luck with putting quizzes in his so that the students have an extra incentive to watch, and so we're doing that, and so it's a great office, great resource right there.
When you do the quizzes, embed them in your online, how do you have the students submit them? Do you submit them through Blackboard, and you evaluate there, do you have them in the class?
You can answer that.
Well, it's right there in the video.
Yeah, it's actually, it's like, I mean, yeah.
You say, well, at the end of the video, they can take the quiz in the same window, same browser. So it's a continuous thing. They like watch 7 minutes and then take 2 questions in the same window, and then continue the lecture another 7 minutes, and then do the next quiz question.
And where do they respond? They respond in the video, and
In
that
the
goes
video.
to the professor?
Yeah, it goes to, I mean, it has to be like multiple choice, true,
Yeah.
it can't be anything where they write out, well, I guess it could be, but that's not the way it's doing it. So they're,
And all the questions and the students' answers will be moved to Blackboard. So there will be automatic written column. You can see whether they complete watching the lecture or whether they did quiz question correct. So it's very clear you can get the results. You don't have to go back to the grade, all automatic.
We're about out of time, so I'd like to thank you all again for coming. Thank our opportunities at conversation like this in the future, and more information about this study will come out in the summer. So, and you can grill them all on how they did later on.